But that's part of your personality as like a product person. What I see in other product people I talk to or hired is that product is always the unquenchable thirst for knowing and understanding. Naturally, you're gravitating towards, oh, I have to know. I need to own it. One way to own it is to say, okay, I'm going to champion these processes, work. So we have interviews and doing discovery process, and I'm going to lead, with example. Another way of doing it is to harness everybody else, opening the minds of these people to, there's some real insights in what you're doing that is going to benefit the entire organization.
Welcome to the Product Agility Podcast, the missing link between agile and product. The purpose of this podcast is to share practical tips, strategies, and stories from world-class thought leaders and practitioners. Why, I hear you ask? Well, I want to increase your knowledge and your motivation to experiment so that together we can create ever more successful products. My name is Ben Maynard, and I'm your host. What has driven me for the last decade to bridge the gap between agility and product is a deep-rooted belief that people and products evolving together can achieve mutual excellence. And in this week's episode, we are joined by a product executive, long-time product professional whose career has spanned leading one of the first video instant messaging platforms to huge success. We're talking millions of users, and it went on to win many awards, whose career then took him into being the director of product at a children's hospital, which is an interesting application of product in a traditionally non-product environment, and who now finds himself leading a breakthrough product which is tackling the opioid crisis in the USA. Who am I talking about? Well, his name is Omer Kaplan, and he joins us for 2 episodes. Before the episode begins, do think of a product professional, an agile coach, a product coach, somebody who's struggling with what it means to create a great product team. Because Omer has got the experience and he's got those golden nuggets, which I'm sure you and your peers are going to find invaluable. So recommend this episode to one of those people. And without any further ado, let's begin the episode. Building product teams is something which has been a consistent theme throughout your career.
Without never really aiming for it, I guess. Well, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stories, but yeah, throughout my career, I came into organization, built product teams, scaled those organizations, led some 2 acquisitions. And yeah, we're going to talk about all about that. Like, how do we do it? What are the different considerations for, depending on the product role you're at? Yeah, it's going to be interesting times.
What I think people would like to know, and I'm going to put this out there just because I know there is a lot of ambiguity in certain communities, I suppose, as to, well, forgetting the ambiguity around just what a product is. We will cover that another day maybe, but just what is a product team? And I'm wondering, in your experience and the companies where you've worked, what have you found is is there a typical composition of a product team?
That's a great question. I think the answer, like a lot of things in product management, is it depends. The way I'm approaching it today, giving like all my learnings from the past, is the composition of a product team is whatever works to meet the organization business goals. For example, there's a lot of conversations about, people love to talk about ratios, right? Engineers to product to design, or
don't they love that?
Yep, the ratio is a great topic. Or is it a product trio? Are those pods? So there's a lot of tools and instruments in product management that's going to help you build the right people to achieve what we're trying to do. I think it all starts with, what tools do we need in order to help the business goals, right? So the product team is, depending on the organization, is in charge of discovery and talking to customers and uncovering what do we need to do in order to sustain us as a company and build competitive advantage. So how many people, what type of the profiles of those people, kind of all starts from the top and boils down to, okay, so what do we need product wise to make that happen?
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you think absolutely should never be present in a product team?
I would say the thing that never should be present in product teams is sticking to the traditional roles, right? So I'm a software engineer. This is what I do. I'm a product manager. This is what I do. I think pragmatism, especially in, well, no, I would say across the board. That is the companies I worked for. So for context, for people who listened, I spent time in large scale product management as well as small startups. And pragmatism and asking yourself all the time, is it something that's good for us? Does it work? Is this composition and people and processes is helpful? is always something that should be on the table. So what never should be present, I would say, traditional on rails thinking.
Mm-hmm. So dogmatism, like in certain respects. So I am a product manager, and I should never talk to people, a certain type of person, about X. I should never. I mean, one of the classic ones I find comes up with some of the companies that I work with is who should own and have the relationship with the users or customers. Should it be product? Should it be user research? Should it be maybe some people in the engineering side of it? And I think that does depend upon the context and the people as to who owns that relationship.
Yes, that's a wonderful question. So who owns the relationship with the customer? So let's think about it in the sense of it all starts from the business goals, right? Or it all starts from the organization. So at the end of the day, we are humans building stuff for other humans. And when I say building, I don't mean only software. I mean, we're building operational workflows from the operations team. We're building sales processes. We're building user research and discovery processes. If someone owns, quote unquote, the relationship with the customer, it means that this context belongs to this one person and they need to spread out throughout the organization, as opposed to maybe a culture where everybody in the organization are customer focused and the context flow between different people. For example, imagine two organizations. An organization where, let's say, the product person or the user research person is doing product interviews with a certain prism because this is how they roll, this is what they've been trained to, getting insight and then sharing information with the team. And then maybe talking to the data people, sitting in meetings, saying, oh, from our interviews, this is what I discovered. As opposed to organization where sales talk to customer and relay that to the product people, or if they discover something in operation, they talk to the operation people. And the conversations around customers are are always present because at the end of the day, those are the people paying for the product or using the product. So ownership is better shared than hoarded and then distributed because it's always going to be through your prism.
Actually, I think it was I mean, I like the question, but I think it was flawed because it comes from a place, I think, in me where I agree. Everyone needs to have some level of ownership of that customer user relationship. And it isn't about, as you said before, that kind of sticking to the rails, sticking to your role. It has to be more than that, because otherwise, how are people going to connect to the purpose of what you're trying to achieve? And it's that purpose that drives us. And it's funny, when I answered the question, maybe I was thinking that maybe there is a person that should own own that relationship. And I just kind of then kicked myself and realized maybe what a stupid thing that was.
But that's part of your personality as like a product person. So what I see in other product people I talk to or hired is that product is always the unquenchable thirst for knowing and understanding. So naturally you're gravitating towards, oh, I have to know. So I need to own it. So there's one way to own it is to say, okay, I'm going to champion these processes. I'm going to work. So we have interviews and doing discovery process, and I'm going to lead with example. Another way of doing it is to harness everybody else to do it. And those are people that sometimes fall into those roles. So I'm a salesperson. This is what I do. I'm an implementation person, an ops person. I'm a customer success person who answers Zendesk tickets all day, right? Opening the minds of these people there's some real insights in what you're doing that is going to benefit the entire organization, that maybe we all collect information about the customer. And maybe you're doing the taxonomy in an organization, but everybody are in the game.
It reminds me in one of our recent episodes, a chap named Raymond, who's a product designer product design manager at Marketer, was explaining how in his organization, they like to get kind of sales and product design like working together in the sales process, because what they find is actually there's a huge amount of benefit from having people aligned in that, particularly on many things, but they're finding particularly in that sales process, it makes a huge degree of sense, logical and emotional, to have those people working together. Now, I mean, you've got an amazing career journey, in my opinion. I think you've worked at...
It has definitely been a ride. Or is a ride still. Like the ride's not over. We're in the ride.
Not the road to nowhere. I mean, brilliant song, but Not for you, because I think you've had some amazing experiences and you've worked at some organizations. I mean, when you mentioned Uvu when we first spoke,
Mhm.
that fired some synapses off for me because I remember that. I'm pretty certain I do. And I got very excited when you mentioned that. And we'll delve into that, I think, through some of the stories as we go through. And so, what I'm curious about is that building product teams is something that you're passionate about. But like, where did that passion begin for you?
Passion is an interesting word. I think it came out of necessity, and it came a lot of trial and error. And I think it can even track back on like to how I stumbled into product, like all the people back in the day, like it was 2006. I was hired at a startup company as an employee number three. This company had a CEO, it had salesperson, and then it was me. So CEO did business development, salesperson did the sales thing, I did all the rest, which was community management and the development of the thing. And so eventually this thing grew, and I was kind of, without knowing really what product management is, I was like, okay, we need to hire people now because this thing is growing beyond our control. I naturally gravitated towards, let's get some engineers here, let's get the designers who we outsource, let's get them working here. And we started building what we didn't know was a product organization back in the day, but we had a conversation of how we're going to work together. What is the day-to-day look like? And this was me being very young in my career and didn't finding those stuff as I go. Mostly the rigorous execution of this thing needs to be developed somehow, not so much in the strategy type of sense. The interesting thing and this was way back in the day, that company I was working for ended up being acquired by a very big media, or maybe the biggest media conglomerate in Israel back in the day. And I, as a very young professional, got thrown into a director role at this company where I governed not only my project, but two others. And all of a sudden I had tons of people to manage. And I kind of had to take like my learning from like the few years working there, forming a very small team that worked very hard, to now I remember the first time I walked into my manager's office was a vice president, this like huge, imagine something like CNN size, like it's pretty big. I walk in there and he said, you have these like three big projects. I want you to make me a SWOT analysis of competition because we need to budget because of reasons. And I'm sitting there, I was like, okay. I walk up to the room, I Google SWOT analysis. That and at the end, I think at the end of the day, so that was a very overwhelming experience for me. And at the end of the experience, I said, I think there's some road I need to walk between the small scale thing I did here, which was very rigorous, very hard, very passionate, and where I am now. And that's how I ended up in Uvu. I said, I need to go back to manage a product in a traditional environment, learn how things work through my experience, but also get this formalized training. So I left that huge, great role, great salary, great organization. Tons of people love to talk about headcount as accolade. I manage all these people, but I was like, I need to learn. And that's pretty much where my journey in Uvu started, after a gap where I built a product team in an advertising agency, which was a great experience. But I ended up in Uvu, where I basically started as a senior product person, and went all the way up to a product lead.
So just to wind it back a bit, because there's a lot of interesting little bits to pick apart from that. So that company you mentioned before, the one where, what was it, CEO doing business development, sales, selling, and then you doing everything else. What company was that?
Oh, it was a really nice. Okay, so that's a great story. We're gonna hear a lot of those. So way back in the day, remember those Web 2.0 people where you had like a social network for everything?
Yeah.
It was like way back in the day. Then before Facebook was a thing, at least in Europe, like outside of the US, Israel had a really interesting initiative where the Yellow Pages company, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you have to be a certain age to remember what the Yellow Pages were.
The Yellow Pages company had a really interesting product where every high school student in Israel got a mini Yellow Pages with all the phone numbers and, get ready for it, ICQ numbers.
Oh, ICQ numbers. Oh my
I
God. I mean,
know.
I'm not going to now get carried away about that because I'll get messages from the producer saying, Ben, shut up. But ICQ numbers, I mean, special.
Well, we're talking like
Oh,
2006. So right off the trajectory, like ICQ is not being a thing anymore, and the rise of
Yeah.
instant messaging and social networks. But the Yellow Pages had a product where phone numbers, ICQ of all the people in your school, where people used to call each other houses back in the day from a stationary phone. Anyway,
That landline telephone number.
so this startup company bought this whole portion of the business from Yellow Pages. So now we had a database of all the high school students in Israel that are getting a physical product in their hands. And the goal was to digitize this product and make a social network out of it.
Wow. Okay.
It
And
was
just to clarify for people that have no idea, Googling what ICQ is, ICQ was very similar to MSN Messenger back in
Yep.
the day. They were kind of the choices that you had, I think, weren't they?
Yep, it
Primarily.
was ICQ versus MSN Messenger way back in the day, and then the cool people were using like this like third-party instant messaging programs.
And the
Uh,
really cool people, was it IRQ channels?
yep,
That's what they're really cool.
IRC, right?
IRC, that
Yeah, just the internet
IRC
relay.
channels.
Yeah, the internet
Yes.
relay chat people. Which I think this is me like creating a hypothesis, but I think Slack is built on similar
Is it
protocol.
really?
Yeah, like
Ah.
channels, permissions. I
Yeah,
think like
yeah, yeah.
it's in the gist of it.
Just less illegal file sharing on Slack.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the IRC protocol is open source or not. But,
No. Anyway,
yeah, yes, so that was ICQ back in the day.
so this company basically bought that business from the Yellow Pages,
Yeah,
digitized it all.
it bought the physical product, and we made a social network out of it where you got the book, and in that physical book, you had a card, and that card was your key to like an invitation to the social network. And then we basically created like a virtual representation of the social network of all the different high school classes in Israel.
Wow.
Super cool product, lots of community management, lots of technical challenges because some people they graduate from high school, so what do you do with them? How does that work? And real cool stuff. But yeah, it ended up getting acquired, which is
Oh,
super cool
really?
process to go through. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's what a fascinating evolution from a physical thing which was given to students to allow them to stay in touch within the school to then actually. I wonder if you could. If oh, I know, but the data protection laws nowadays, would they allow such a thing? I don't know.
that's a great question. Back in the day, and we're talking like 16 years ago, that Yellow Pages book with the phone numbers and ICQ was the only product, a commercial product that was allowed in schools because schools aren't allowed commercial products
Yeah.
going
Wow.
because it was the Yellow Pages and everybody trusted the Yellow Pages. It was okay. It's only phone numbers, but then yeah, the commercial business came in with our company.
Yeah. So funny. Yeah. So from the little Yellow Pages to one of the early social networks, I
Very
suppose.
early, yep. Way before, like a few years before Facebook was a thing.
Yeah. To acquisition. And who acquired it?
So that big media conglomerate,
Yeah.
they acquired that startup as well as like two other teenager related companies. And their goal was, okay, we're like pretty good on the news front, the adult content side. Now want to appeal to teenagers, so we're gonna acquire a bunch of startups related to it. And so I was the department manager. I don't remember the title, but that was kind of the thing like governing all the different products.
And so then your love and your skills, your passion for product teams started then in those early days of that startup, and then you got acquired by this big media organization, and then you were there for a while before you hadn't just had enough, I suppose, of working in that kind of larger organization. And I suppose in that large organization, did you notice a difference as to the drive you had when you're in a small company? You're working with a CEO, and it's all very kind of small and real. Did you notice that your passion or your purpose, your reason for being, got diluted or changed in any way?
I I think the thing that was lost on me was the mission, like moving from a startup company with a very clear mission to connect teenagers and create friendship, long-lasting relationships, like all those like good intents, to working at this big media organization where the goal was very financially related to the business goals of the adult section. So let's sell ads. Long story short.
Yeah.
And ads back in the day was a very lucrative business. It's sponsorships and like all these things. And I remember sitting, and so now I had a team dedicated to each project, and I was
Mm.
more detached from the low level day-to-day product management and community management, I said, I feel like I need to work more and develop a product before I can get to where I am now to be an effective, let's call it director. Now, like that's more of equivalent of a director of product where you're working on multiple product lines. I didn't have the tools back then to say, okay, we have all these projects. What is the mission? How does it connect to the organizational mission? I was more execution oriented, putting in a managerial position. So everything I did was very execution related. I said, okay, that's not, I have a way to go still.
So you said you didn't have the tools, and then you mentioned that linkage between the purpose of each of the products and how that relates to the company goals. Do you think, well, first of all, that linkage, is that the tool that you had in mind when you said that you didn't have the tools at the time to deal with that situation, or were there other tools in addition to that?
I think I was missing the entire business side that was required. Okay. I think from a director in that role. In retrospect, a very nice thing to do was, and this is a thing I'm passionate about now, but wasn't back in the day, was looking at all these three product lines and say, what's the personality and what's the mission of each one? How does that relate to the whole teenager initiative? Managing my vice president and say, hey, we got all this project. What's the end game? How does that connect to the higher business goals? How can we expand? Like, what's the trajectory for each one? So really, I was missing the entire business perspective back then, because starting as a product person, I was never required to think business-wise. It was all about what's the next iteration of this product and how do I execute? And I was feeding off business development and sales for that. I wasn't developing that culture on my own.
So would you say then that when you're building a strong product team, having that connection to the mission at the product level is important, but then at a senior level, if you're on top of that product, maybe others, being able to understand emotionally and cognitively, how do those individual products help you achieve your larger organizational mission?
Yes. So fast forward 16 years from way back in the day. There's no ICQ anymore, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe there's some people out there that use it. We're not judging.
I'm totally going to try and download it and install it later. I'll send you my CQ number.
Yeah, well, if you do, yeah, we should totally do it. So fast forward 16 years, I think the way I work with the product team at Sonar Health, where I'm currently working, is that it's my belief that the product team needs to have exposure not only to the mission, which, I mean, we're a small startup company, so the mission is all we have, and we can talk about it separately. But more importantly, I want all the people in the product team to have really good exposure of the business side. And maybe that's me overcorrecting from 16 years ago. But if you talk to our engineers or lead designer or even some of our partner engineers we work with, like I want them to have a really good understanding of how contracting works. How does billing work? How does the money flow from the customer to the billing department? And what is required from every function in the company to build that business model and make it a sustainable business. And that's a lot of context that I have as a head of product, because I'm very much connected to, so I'm not only running a product team, I'm also running a company or part of a team that runs a company. And I think it's important that every person understand how does the business operate. So it makes their decision very informed about, I have the mission and the vision and I want to make the customers' lives better for it. But I also recognize that there is a business and how it works. And here are some dependencies and constraints we may have.
I think your current organization does it have a very heart-based mission, because maybe if you just spend a moment telling our listeners a little bit about what your company does, because it's something I think is very worthwhile and important. So yeah, please do tell everyone a little bit about the startup itself.
That's awesome. Yes. So thank you for asking. So Sonar Health is a healthcare technology company that help expand access to life-saving medication. Right now, we're focused on people with opioid dependency and expanding access to methadone, which for our listeners, if you have opioid dependency and you're thinking about getting treatment, you have a few options. Most of them are direct to consumer, less regulated, but less effective against all the stuff that's going on in the street today. Methadone is essentially an opioid in and of itself that helps people not control, but it helps them mitigate their withdrawals and symptoms so they can focus on other parts of treatment if they wanted to. So getting counseling, going to school, getting a job, all that stuff. Methadone is highly regulated. And we work in that space. So how can we expand access to methadone for people that need it? And how can we expose more people that need treatment or want treatment into methadone treatment?
And how is that working? Like from the product itself, like how do you
Yes.
do that?
Okay. So glad you asked. Let's start with the customer, or let's start with the person who wants to get into methadone treatment. As a person with opioid dependency, you are already part of a very rare cohort of people that want to get treatment. So 90%, at least in the US, of people with opioid dependency are not even in treatment. So you are a very special person. To get methadone, at least in the US, in the UK is a little bit different. So in the UK, methadone is prescribed by a physician and you can pick that up in a pharmacy.
Mhm.
There's some issues around that. Talk about it later. In the US, methadone can only be dispensed at opioid treatment programs. So let's call it a methadone clinic.
Yeah.
So as a person with opioid dependency, here's what your day-to-day look like. Those clinics open 5 a.m. to noontime, roughly. As a person with opioid dependency, you wake up every day at 4 a.m., go to the treatment center, and then you stand in line, stand in front of a nurse, take your medication because methadone is an opioid. It has to be monitored, some say. You take your methadone, you go home, you do it all over again. So 4 a.m. to whatever time you're getting out of the center every day for 9 months. You may get some take-home medication for the weekend, but that's how your life. So all the health equity issues that you can think about are in that flow. If you don't have any transportation getting to the center, you have a problem. If you have a day job, childcare, relationship, school, anything that prevents you from getting treatment, you can. And this is where we come in. We say, first of all, we have so our solution make it so you don't have to go to the center every day. And we use operational workflows. We work together with opioid treatment programs in partnership. So you don't have to go to the center every day. Instead, you're getting 7 bottles. I think I have one here, maybe. Yep, I do. Get one of these. It's a take-home medication bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And you get 7 of those. So instead of going to the center every day, you go once a week, which is a huge difference for those people, like in their quality of life and quality of treatment. And we have a pathway for you to get more of the take-home medication. So after a period of time of making up a number, after 6 months, you only have to go in once a month. So you pick up like 28 take-home medication. Mm-hmm. The only hoop you have to jump through to do it is we have an app where you put in your phone, and then you take a video of yourself every day taking your medication at home. And then on the other end, there's an app on the clinician side when they review those videos. And that's how you build trust, get more take-home medication, and get the treatment with expanded access. So you don't have to go every day.
Clever. So what if someone doesn't send a video one day? Is that taken as like a red flag and they get like a certain number of strikes, or?
It always depends on the center itself and the workflow that they set. So one thing about healthcare is that everybody's special. So every state in the US is special. Every center have their own policies. So and that's something we also help create more structure around. Some of them would say, hey, if they miss a video one time, we'll reach out. We understand what's going on. That's fine. If they miss a few consecutive times, then maybe we need a clinical intervention. Mm-hmm. Maybe the next time they come around, we say, hey, you can get your bottles before you talk to your counselor, for example, and sort it out. And some people it's not for them and they leave the program. But it takes people a few attempts sometimes before they get retained in treatment. Mm-hmm. Because the whole flow of come in every day, stand in line, take medication, go home is really demanding. And some people don't know what they're getting into. We are there to facilitate that as well. There's a lot of other things that we help with, but medication adherence is one, and mostly working on keeping patients in treatment and building trust with their care team.
So a real purpose, a mission, which is making a difference. And I'm guessing that your founder has some relationship with this world. Is he a doctor?
Our founder is an MD. He's a psychiatrist. I mean, mission is all we have. And I'm not a clinician personally, so I'm not an MD. And it's this working in Sonara is the closest I've ever gotten to say, because of the things I'm working on, I help save people's lives. A person who would spin out of treatment and go back to not meeting their treatment goals or go back to whatever lifestyle they had prior is now in treatment and achieving what they needed to achieve because of something I helped create. And it's incredible. It's the closest I've gotten to saying I help save people's lives.
And
Which
that's
is,
phenomenal.
At least for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would hope for most people having that feeling would be something special. And I think, what your organization is doing is fantastic. And it's clearly something you're really passionate about. And what I'm curious about is that you're passionate about it. And how do you then help your product teams get that passion and that same feeling? How do you get them talking to the users? Like, do you have a mission statement which kind of sums it up? Like, how do you do that?
So I think it's all of those things, but it starts, especially in a small startup company, it starts with hiring certain type of people. So in a small startup company, the mission is all we have. I think I said it 5 minutes ago. But the mission is all we have. I listened to a bunch of product podcasts, this one included. Great. I recommend everybody to listen to it consistently. There's a lot of talk about what does your career path needs to look like as a PM. One of the things some people say is that you need to collect logos on your resume. So go to companies that everybody know, they do certain things, and this is certainly a path that you can go.
Yeah.
And as a small startup company in the healthcare industry that work with a very niche, very big problem, very important problem, but we're not the logo that you can collect. Mission is all we have. The only way I have to get people to invest in the company, hiring certain types of people, getting partnerships that we wouldn't normally get, is by inspiring people into action. Like that's the only way we have. Like me and the other people of the team standing and advocating for our mission is the way we're getting the type of people that's going to make this company what it is. And so it starts with hiring and it starts with culture first. So I don't have to do, and we're going to talk about the day-to-day stuff in a second, but it's not that I have to start every product stand up and say, remember the mission, we are here to expand access to life-saving medication. The people that we have, the core team, are bought into the mission and the vision and they know the business and they know what the company's trajectory can be. We do constant evaluation. So every quarter, our product roadmap is kind of like a living, evolving document. So every quarter we go in and we have the company mission and vision, which is pretty much set. But then we have a product mission and product vision. So we look at it and we say, is that still the path that we're going? We're looking at the team values and say, are those still applicable to us? And we make adjustments. Maybe it's a word. Maybe we say that still feels good. And then we constantly evaluating, constantly asking questions to keep that feeling of we're still connected to the mission and we still have impact on the mission.
That's a pitfall that some companies fall into, is that they don't think that their vision can evolve or their mission can evolve. They believe it's set and it's done. And I think there are people who say it should change infrequently. But the fact that you're looking at it and you're challenging it and you're tweaking it, so that sounds like it's creating a higher level of engagement with your mission than I think I've heard in other organizations.
Yes, I agree. I mean, it kind of starts there. And then once I'm a big believer in like the infrastructure leading the way. If you have a solid infrastructure in the mission and the vision, then asking yourselves as the product team, how are we contributing to the organization, to the business goals? What are the things that we identify from going into like product motions? What opportunities are out there that jive with that vision, that contribute to the business as we know it? So it's almost everything kind of cascading from there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to have these agreements and conversations once everybody are bought into the basics.
It begs the question, what is your mission statement or your vision statement?
That's a wonderful question. The product vision is equitably transforming substance use treatment by guiding patients through their journey and expanding access to care. There's two components here. First of all, the word equitably, this guides a lot of our conversations and a lot of our like design and development philosophy, guiding patients through their journey. The word guiding is a strong word. We work in the path with you. We're not we're a very flashy tech company that's going to just put some technology in your way. We're working the path with you and then expanding access to care, which connects to the company's mission and vision.
Awesome.
Yes.
Omer, thank you for that explanation and that insight. I think
absolutely my pleasure.
So if we were going to summarize in a paragraph or two, What is it then that really, what are the takeaways, let's say, for building great product teams? What would you say what are the bullet points for you?
I would say, first of all, internally, before you start building the team, have a good understanding of the company's organizational goals, mission, vision, and then from that derive where the product team, how the product team contributes to that. And then building product team is all about getting the right people on board that share that vision and conviction and philosophy. That's the baseline. And then having a consistent process to expose people to context. So business context, sales context, like all those, like give people as much information as needed for them to pour it into their professional expertise.
So then I'm going to add two things. One, I think that everything you said around mission and purpose, I think building a great product team, I think and having that big, I think you've kind of said it already, but I think getting teams really connected to that mission, that purpose, like why you exist, understanding how their work concretely contributes towards it. But I think also when you're a small organization, when you're a startup, you can't, and this may seem like ruthless, right? And a bit of an arsehole comment to say, but I don't think you can carry people that can't or won't buy into it.
Yes, that's true. I think so. In small companies, it's the people that make the company what it is. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas out there that I think tanked because of like philosophy change, like philosophy differences. And it's not a founder, co-founder even. There's a lot about those, and those are like great stories. But it's also, if there's a disconnect between how the head of product sees how the process should work and how the product should be developed, or why, on which direction, if that's not aligned with the success path for the company and the mission, then over time that's going to create discrepancies. So I agree. It's all about the people first.
It is. It has to be. And I think, I don't know, I'm a big fan of purpose, right? It gets me out of bed. We're going to draw episode 1 to a close, and we're going to then start thinking about episode 2. And in episode 2, to build upon all the fantastic guidance and tips and stories that you shared around what it takes to build a great product team, we're going to talk about how to build product teams at scale. So what are the differences? If you're building a single product team, we spoke about mission and purpose, but maybe if we spend a bit of time exploring any nuances or differences as to how we do that at scale. And then we'll also talk about product teams in what we say non-traditional, so not a traditionally product environments, some of your experiences there. So we'll pick those up for episode 2. Is there anything that you would like to share with the audience to kind of wrap up episode 1?
It has been great so far. I bet part 2 will be as good or better.
Okay, Omer, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening. Do remember to subscribe or pick up this podcast on your platform of choice, because we are going to be back for episode 2 this time next week. So thank you for listening again. Omer, thank you very much, and we'll see you all soon.